My name is Pierce. It's been 3 months since the painter case closed. The silence that followed should have been a relief, but quiet is a strange companion. It settles into the bones and hums, like something trying to be heard. I thought I was imagining it at first, a faint note beneath the traffic, the whispering vents, the slow rhythm of the city's breath. Then the call came. It was 2:37 a.m. The line cracked, split, then steadied. "Detective Pierce?" The voice trembled, half swallowed by static. "They're singing again." I didn't ask who they were. Some things you understand before you know them. I arrived at the address an hour later, a cluster of brick buildings at the edge of the industrial district, where rain gathered in gutters that never drained. The woman who'd called me waited on the steps, a cigarette burning down to the filter. Her name was Marla. She was a city maintenance worker, in charge of waste channels and old sewer maps no one else wanted to touch. "They started 2 nights ago," she said. "From down there." She pointed toward the storm drain. "Not rats. Not pipes. Voices." The air around us vibrated with the low moan of wine through the tunnels. But beneath that, yes, there was something else. Distant. Organized. Harmonic. A choir. The city archives told me the underground grid was built in the 1940s, part bomb shelter, part maintenance labyrinth. It was sealed after a collapse in the 60s. No one went down since. But the recent rainfall had reopened one of the vents. I went down alone that night. The ladder groaned with age. Water clung to the rungs, cold as veins. The light from my torch fractured through the dripping air, cutting across the old tiled walls where mildew spelled strange constellations. And the deeper I went, the clearer the sound became. The choir was singing in rounds. Voices, dozens, maybe hundreds, echoed through intersecting tunnels. Male and female, young and old, rising and falling in perfect intervals. I couldn't make out words, but there was intent. The sound wasn't chaotic. It was building something. At the base of the ladder, I found the tunnel split 3 ways. I took the left path, the one that sloped downward, where the resonance felt thickest. My flashlight flickered twice and steadied. The air smelled of rust and wet limestone. Someone had been there recently. A small maintenance light still blinked on the wall, hooked to a portable battery. Next to it, a stack of notebooks half soaked in grime. I opened one carefully. Chamber E9. Harmonic stable. Source unknown. The notes were dated only 2 weeks ago. Scribbled diagrams followed, waveforms, frequency charts, an attempt to record sound as geometry. The writer, an engineer by the style, had circled something in red ink. Voices at 19 Hz, below human hearing threshold. Yet felt through bone. I could feel it too. My ribs thrummed with it. The tunnel opened into a chamber large enough to hold a small chapel. The ceiling arched upward into shadow. In the center, a pool of water reflected the light in shattered lines. And there, on the far side, I saw movement. Shapes, silhouettes, kneeling. Dozens of them, heads bowed, shoulders rising in rhythm. Their mouths were open. Sound poured out, not from their throats, but from the space around them, like air vibrating to remember a song. I stepped forward, and the singing changed key. It rose in pitch until my teeth ached. My flashlight dimmed. The nearest figure lifted its head, revealing hollow eyes. Not sockets, just darkness soft and deep. A sound slipped from that void, almost like my name. Pierce. I stumbled back. The water trembled with the echo. The figures dissolved, not vanished but blurred, as if the light refused to hold them. The song continued without them. And then, for the first time, I understood the pattern in their harmony. It was not music. It was a map. A sound map of the city above, each note marking a street, a district, a heartbeat. The choir wasn't singing to us. It was singing of us. I climbed back to the surface before dawn, drenched and shaking. The streets were empty. Only the drains whispered now, faint but constant, like a lullaby for concrete and rust. Marla waited in her truck, headlights cutting the fog. "Well?" she asked. "They're still singing," I said. She lit another cigarette, hand trembling. "What do we do?" I didn't answer. Because even as I stood there, I could hear the faint melody rising again, from every manhole, every gutter, every vent. The choir was growing louder. And this time, I could hear my own voice among them. It rose in pitch until my teeth ached, the sound sliding through frequencies that didn't belong to the human throat. The air itself quivered, dense with invisible movement. I stumbled back toward the wall, hand shaking around the flashlight. The beam trembled across the chamber, catching for an instant on a piece of machinery, something half submerged near the water's edge. It was an old recording device. A reel-to-reel, corroded but intact. The tape inside still looped, squealing in slow motion, whispering fragments of the same melody that now surrounded me. I shut it off out of instinct, and the choir ceased. The silence that followed was immense. For a moment, I thought they had stopped because of me. But then I realized the sound hadn't ended. It had moved. It was in the metal, the water, the air. The tunnels were carrying it, passing it along like veins pulsing with blood. Something mechanical hummed behind the wall. A low vibration, rhythmic 3 pulses, pause 3 again. My body recognized it before my mind did. A heartbeat. Back on the surface, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in my apartment carried a faint undertone now, the refrigerator, the pipes, even the rain on the window. All humming in the same pitch. I spent the night playing the reel I'd taken from the tunnels, slowing it down, reversing it, isolating layers. Around 4 a.m., the pattern appeared on my monitor, a waveform repeating at regular intervals, too structured to be natural. It wasn't random noise. It was a signal. The next morning, I met Marla at the city maintenance office. She looked worse than before, eyes sunken, fingers trembling as she unfolded a stack of blueprints across the table. "You were right," she said. "There are sections not listed in the public grid. I checked old city records. E9 connects to E12, and that one leads to a collapsed sector that was used for testing acoustic resonance during the war." "Testing what exactly?" I asked. She hesitated. "Sound as a control mechanism. The rumor was they were experimenting with frequencies that could influence behavior." I stared at the blueprint. The tunnel spiraled inward, almost organic in pattern, like a cochlea, an ear buried beneath the city. We returned underground the following night with recording equipment and headlamps. The tunnels seemed different, more awake. Water rippled as if stirred by unseen movement. The echoes didn't bounce back naturally anymore. They bent, curling around us, whispering at the edges. At Chamber E9, the notebooks were gone. Only wet paper fragments remained, smeared across the floor like shed skin. The pool in the center pulsed gently, surface vibrating in time with a faint hum. When I aimed the recorder toward it, the waveform spiked off the scale. "Maybe it's just pressure fluctuations," Marla said. Her voice wavered, disbelief creeping in. The hum grew louder. Something glimmered beneath the water, a shape, metallic and moving. Then another. The surface broke for an instant, releasing a single bubble that carried a note so low it made my stomach twist. We backed away slowly. When the sound reached its peak, every light died at once. The headlamps, the recorder, even the backup torch, all snapped into black. And in that darkness, the choir began again, closer this time, voices weaving around us in impossible proximity. I felt breath against my ear. Pierce. Not shouted, not whispered, asterisk sung star. My name, folded into harmony. When the lights finally flickered back, Marla was gone. Only her flashlight lay on the ground, beam pointing into the water. I called her name, voice echoing thinly, distorted by the acoustics. For a second, I thought I heard her answer, from somewhere deep below, but it was only the choir's shifting tone, aligning to mimic her voice. I ran. By the time I reached the surface, dawn was breaking. The city looked the same, but it sounded different, quieter, too quiet. No birds, no distant traffic, no hum of morning life. Just the faint trace of that same rhythm beneath it all. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 again. The city was listening. The next day came slow, like the city didn't want to wake up. I drove to the precinct, but the streets were empty. No chatter, no street vendors shouting their morning pitches. Just an eerie stillness that made my engine sound too loud. At my desk, the phone rang once and then cut off. When I picked it up, I could still hear it, the faint chorus, as if the line itself was breathing. I dropped the receiver, and the sound continued through the dial tone, layered in whispers. One of them spoke. Pierce, she's below. I slammed it down. The city engineers didn't want to help me anymore. The first 2 I spoke with refused to even say the word. E9. One of them, an older man with trembling hands, muttered something about resonant collapse, that the tunnels weren't just collapsing physically, but sonically, folding in on frequencies humans couldn't survive. I didn't care. Marla was still down there. I spent the afternoon gathering equipment, industrial recorder, signal jammer, flashlight, and a portable radio tuned to a broad frequency band. The choir had spread through the electrical grid. If it was transmitting, I'd hear it. The first sound came at dusk. The radio hiss then broke into what sounded like an old broadcast, a war-era transmission, voice crisp but warped. This is Sector 12. Test in progress. If you can hear this, leave immediately. Sound is. The rest dissolved into harmony. I turned off the radio, but the voice continued for a few seconds afterward, echoing from somewhere inside the walls. I realized then that the city didn't need wires anymore. It was the transmission. By the time I reached the drainage entrance again, fog had rolled in thick and heavy. I descended quickly, torchlight slicing the dark. The tunnels felt alive, vibrating with soft, almost polite murmurs, as if the choir was aware I'd returned. The waterline had risen since last time. The air tasted of copper. I followed the hum back toward chamber E9, recording every step. The waveform on my monitor spiked wildly, forming repeating vertical lines, almost like handwriting. And then I saw it, faintly carved into the slime-covered wall, E12. Marla's writing. She'd found the next chamber. I followed. E12 was smaller than E9, but it was filled with machinery, old acoustic rigs, hanging microphones, and something like a resonant amplifier bolted into the stone. Half the devices still ran, lights blinking faintly. A console at the back displayed a waveform, looping endlessly. When I played it through the recorder, I realized it wasn't random noise. It was a voice. Marla's. She was singing, low and broken. The words were faint, half-drowned, but I could make out fragments. Not them, don't listen, they need space to breathe. I pressed my hand to the amplifier. It was warm, almost feverish. Beneath the static, her breathing continued, syncing perfectly with the hum in the walls. And then, clear as day, she spoke. Pierce, stop listening. I staggered back. The amplifier flared, spilling sound into the air so dense it felt physical. The walls trembled, and something inside the concrete began to move. Shapes pressed outward, imprints of faces, mouths open in silent chords. The choir surged. I ran, stumbling through half-lit corridors, their geometry wrong, bending where it shouldn't. Every step echoed in time with the music, like the tunnels were playing me as an instrument. My own breath harmonized with it. My heartbeat kept rhythm. By the time I reached the ladder, the sound had risen to a shriek just below pain. I climbed fast, hands raw, lungs burning. When I emerged into the night, the city above was no longer quiet. Every streetlight flickered in time with the pulse. Air vents hummed. The sound of traffic had merged into a low chord that resonated through concrete and glass. And high above, on the rooftops, I saw people, dozens of them, standing still, mouths open, singing. The choir had come to the surface. It started the next morning with the pigeons. They were the first to fall silent. Usually, they would gather on the telephone wires near my apartment, hundreds of them, cooing like a broken organ. That morning, the wires were still full, but not a single bird moved. They perched in perfect stillness, eyes open, beaks parted slightly, as though waiting for a cue. When the wind shifted, I heard it, the faint hum beneath the city's pulse. The choir. The sound had risen above ground. And it was teaching the world to listen. By the time I reached the station, half the precinct was out sick. The rest spoke in whispers, as if afraid their own voices might attract something. The chief's office door was closed, but through the frosted glass I saw him standing completely still, staring at the wall. His mouth moved, slow and mechanical, like he was reciting something from memory. I pressed my ear to the door. The hum came from inside. "Chief?" I said. He turned toward me, and I saw that his eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated so wide they swallowed all color. "Do you hear it, Pierce?" His voice was calm, almost serene. "They're tuning us." I left before the others noticed. The streets outside were worse. People walked in rhythm now, same pace, same spacing, all breathing in time. The buses rolled by in silence, tires barely making sound. Every storefront speaker buzzed faintly, broadcasting a frequency too low to register as music but too deliberate to be random. I needed to find the source again. If Marla's last message was right, if the choir needed space to breathe, maybe it was suffocating under the city's noise. Maybe I could make it stop. But first, I needed to hear what it was saying. I set up equipment in my apartment that night, recorders, frequency analyzers, the same radio that had once caught the old war transmission. I fed the city's ambient sound directly into the system. The waveform spread across the screen, its symmetry uncanny. Every few minutes, it shifted slightly, forming shapes that looked almost alphabetical. By midnight, I had enough data to overlay it against known phonetic patterns. What I saw froze me, the frequencies aligned with human vowels. Not random, not ambient, asterisk linguistic star. The choir wasn't singing music. It was speaking a language. And I was beginning to understand it. At 2:03 a.m., the radio clicked on by itself. Marla's voice filled the room, distorted but clear. "Pierce, if you can hear this, it's not me. Don't let them use my voice." "There." The signal cracked. Static filled the gap. Then another voice spoke, layered and immense, thousands of tones merging into one. "Pierce. We learn through echo." The walls shuddered. Every light in the apartment flickered, bulbs vibrating to the frequency. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound was inside me now, through my jaw, my ribs, my skull. My vision blurred. The radio glowed white-hot. Then silence. I woke hours later on the floor. My ears rang, my vision pulsed with faint afterimages of sound. I could still hear the faint rhythm outside, 3 pulses, pause, 3 again. And beneath it, the whisper of something deeper. My own voice, repeating from somewhere unseen. Do you hear it, Pierce? Do you hear yourself? The next day, the streets were nearly empty. The ones who remained wandered aimlessly, humming softly. Their eyes looked like the chief's, dilated, listening to something far away. Even the air felt different, thicker, as if filled with invisible vibration. By evening, the sun set behind a dull gray haze, and the city lights flickered once and died. Then, from every direction, the choir began. The sound poured from drains, speakers, vents, even the cracks in the pavement. It wasn't just resonance now, it was communication. And through the rising harmony, I could make out words forming, slow and terrible. Pierce. You opened the way. The choir had stopped hiding. It was everywhere. And it was calling me back underground. The city was singing. Every street light, every vent, every surface pulsed in rhythm. The song rose from the earth and bled through the buildings, a vast and gentle roar that shook the night sky. I could feel it in my lungs, my pulse sinking unconsciously to its beat. It was no longer confined to tunnels and drains, it had claimed the air. I watched from the rooftop across the river. The skyline flickered like a breathing thing. Far below, people stood in perfect silence between verses, mouths slightly open, awaiting the next note. When it came, they sang in unison, their voices merging until individuality vanished. And in the gaps between their harmonies, I could still hear mine. I spent the next 2 days searching for a way down deeper than E12. The old blueprints suggested one more level, E0, never finished, officially sealed. Marla's last message had hinted at it. They need space to breathe. The choir wasn't meant to live compressed beneath concrete. The resonance was forcing its way out. If I could reach that chamber, maybe I could collapse it. End it. Or join it. At dusk I returned to the maintenance shaft. The ladder groaned like a throat clearing before a note. The air grew heavier as I descended, the sound pressing closer, thicker. At E12 the machines were silent now, drowned in water that reflected faint blue light from below. A narrow tunnel continued deeper, a new path that hadn't been there before. The choir had made room for me. The passage twisted downward in slow spirals. My flashlight flickered against walls that pulsed faintly, veins of light traveling through the stone as if it were alive. The hum became words, fragments folding into each other. Pierce, we remember you, we learned your voice. At the bottom waited a vast chamber unlike the others. It wasn't stone anymore but metal, smooth, curved, the shape of an immense ear carved into the earth. In the center hung a column of machinery, cables drooping like tendons into black water. Every surface vibrated. The sound wasn't merely audible, it was visible, forming ripples in the air. And there, half submerged at the base of the structure, was Marla. She was alive barely. Her skin glistened with condensation, eyes half open, mouth moving with the rhythm. I rushed to her side, but she didn't react. Her chest rose and fell perfectly in time with the pulse. Marla! My voice cracked. It's me! Her lips trembled. Then, softly, she began to sing. Not words, tones layered and pure. The machinery responded instantly, lights flickering, pitch shifting upward. I felt my bones vibrate in answer. You shouldn't have come, she breathed between notes. It only listens to the ones who listen back. I tried to lift her, but her body was impossibly heavy, rooted to the floor. When I touched her shoulder, a surge of resonance shot through my arm, filling my head with endless overlapping voices, millions of them, whispering the same thing. One voice becomes the many. The many become one. The choir. The central column began to unfold, panels sliding apart like petals opening towards sound. Inside, suspended by cables, was a sphere of mirrored glass, pulsing faintly with light. The reflection on its surface wasn't mine, it was the city above, seen from somewhere below, every street glowing, every person frozen mid-note. I understood then. The choir wasn't invading us. We were its echo. The tunnels, the structures, even the people, refractions of a single ancient resonance trapped beneath the ground, feeding on vibration, memory, and breath. Marla's song reached its final note. The glass sphere trembled. "It needs silence," she whispered. "End the song, Pierce." I pulled the signal jammer from my bag, tuned it to maximum frequency, and threw the switch. The chamber screamed. Every wall convulsed. The hum collapsed into a chaotic roar, the harmony shattering into fragments of pure noise. Marla's eyes widened, then she smiled, faint and peaceful. The sound tore through everything, tearing at air, flesh, thought. And then, nothing. I woke on the surface at dawn, lying on a street I didn't recognize. The city was quiet again. Too quiet. No wind, no hum, no voices. The air felt hollow, drained. The world, for the first time in weeks, was still. I wandered for hours. The people who remained looked disoriented, as if waking from a dream. They moved, spoke, but avoided sound, whispering only when they had to. The pigeons were gone. The drains were silent. At home, I set down my equipment and closed my eyes. Silence should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Because deep beneath the calm, below the hush of morning, I could still feel a faint vibration in my jaw. A rhythm too soft to hear, too steady to ignore. 3 pulses. Pause. 3 again. The choir was not gone. It was inside now. And when I exhaled, the air carried the quietest hum, mine, merging with theirs. The city was resting. Listening. Waiting for me to sing again.